Welcome back to Second Floor Basement, your go-to source for anime summaries and recaps. Hit subscribe and join the legion of anime aficionados and otakus riding the wave. Get ready for a wild ride with Wistoria. At Regarden Magic Academy, Serfort, an honors student in his 6th and final year who is very knowledgeable in magic despite being unable to use magic himself, is called out by Professor Edward Serfint to use magic, and after failing to do so, Edward emphasizes that magic is absolute supremacy. After class, Will is approached by Shaun Ulster, an arrogant classmate hailing from a prestigious noble family, and bullies him to remind him that he will never become a Magia Vander, a title for the most powerful wizards, before Will's friend Colette Lawyer comes to his defense. Will recalls his promise he made to his childhood friend, who became the youngest Magia Vander in history, that serves as his reason for attending magic school. Will sees his advisor, Professor Werkner Norgam, after another dungeon raid, and Werkner tries to convince him to give up since graduating without any spell work credits is practically impossible. Needing 4 credits in 2 days to avoid flunking out, he sets out to the 6th floor of the dungeon to fight a Baskerville. Shaun overhears their conversation and heads to the 6th floor himself to defeat the Baskerville before Will has a chance to ensure his expulsion, but encounters a Sentinel, a 10-credit monster normally found in deeper floors. Shaun is powerless against the Sentinel, but Will arrives and uses his master swordsmanship to easily defeat the monster to earn 10 credits and meet the quota required to stay in school. 5 years ago, Will started school not long after his childhood friend Elfaria Albis Serfort became a Magia Vander, and despite his inability to use magic, impressed the headmaster Cauldron Anuv with his swordsmanship, who envisions his sword being a wand. Back in the present, Werkner explains in a class lecture what ascending the tower means, as the next step to becoming a Magia Vander is to advance to the upper institute, either by inventing a new magic or earning a large number of credits, with the latter being the conventional route, but the former being Will's only realistic route. After class, Will runs into Shaun, who takes out his anger at Will for defeating the Sentinel. Meanwhile, Edward demands Cauldron to expel Will for failing spellwork despite acing all other subjects. Cauldron agrees to do so if he fails a special test administered by Edward. While studying in the library with Colette, Edward summons Will to the magic hall for the test, where Will's objective is to land a hit on Edward. Without his sword, Will struggles, but after Colette delivers Will his sword that he had put in his locker earlier, he slices through Edward's magic and attacks from his blind spot from above to graze his face and pass the test. Will reveals that his goggles he wears when fighting are a parting gift from Elfaria after she graduated from the academy. Back in the present, Will finishes his morning job to deliver newspapers that reveal that Elfaria invented a new magic, and subsequently passes down an order to the academy to collect Frostwalker cores. Will asks his roommate Rusty Nauman to craft a magical item for this order. Afterwards, Will goes to the 4th floor of the dungeon, where he saves the student Iris Churchill, who claims to be once saved by Elfaria. Will and Iris go looking for Frostwalkers on the 4th floor and encounter an unusually strong one called the Frostrex. With Will's swordsmanship and knowledge about the Frostrex, he ties up the monster and uses explosives Rusty made to defeat it. Iris is revealed to be the Watcher Iris X Stella Maris, who was sent by Elfaria to pose as a student and keep watch on Will. Iris reports to the Magia Vander and puts in a recommendation for Will to take a tower position with the fated day just around the corner, but the Magia Vanders object. With the Grand Festival coming, they decide to hold off on deciding on tower positions until after the festival. Lehana Owenzos, Wignall Linder, and Julius Reinberg are revealed as the top students in terms of credits earned and are advancing the Upper Institute. The biennial Grand Magic Festival, a competition between the 4 tower factions, approaches, with Will planning to skip it like last time after embarrassing himself during the event in his 2nd year, despite Colette suggesting he should enter. Will and Colette go to their lockers, and they find a hidden passageway in one of their lockers that leads to an underground gambling ring for the festival. That night, Will goes to work at his night job at Gina's Tavern, a tavern frequented by dwarves, with Rusty. Julius and 2 of his buddies drop by to insult the dwarves, and Will stands up to defend them and demand Julius to apologize. Will and Julius fight, with Will taking out his buddies, but Julius freezing Will in place. Julius decides that he will finish him off at the festival and demands Will to enter it. The Grand Magic Festival begins, and Iris is one of the scouts there, focusing specifically on Will. The first event is the crown attack, where the objective is to navigate through the traps and battle the other students to take the crown at the goal in teams of 3, with Will teaming up with Colette and Shaun. Will charges and equipped with magical gauntlets, with Colette covering for him, and he uses his knowledge and swordsmanship to defeat the enemies. However, Julius gets ahead of him and attacks Will with his ice magic. Shaun responds by casting a powerful fire spell, but then turns his attacks on Will and demands that Will faces Shaun in a duel despite being teammates for the event. As Will and Shaun engage in battle, Shaun recalls the time he first met Will and took out his anger on him for being somebody who cannot use magic. Shaun dares Will to attack, but Will refuses to attack a teammate, understanding the situation. Elsewhere, Colette and Julius fight, and the students watching in the stadium notice that, unbeknownst to the competitors, Julius made clones of himself to attack the other teams. Wignall notices this right away and takes out the clone sent to attack his team. Will attempts to run away, but Shaun cuts off his escape route by summoning his guardian deity Alcone to attack him. Having no choice but to fight back, Will easily reads Alcone's moves and defeats it. Just as Will and Shaun were about to deliver the decisive blow, Colette intervenes and tells Will to go after Julius after she dispatched his clone. Will runs towards the stadium to challenge Julius to a duel. The Ice Faction's aide de camp Sarissa Alfeld presents Elfaria with a recommendation for Julius to become her successor. Will and Julius have their duel to decide the winner of the crown attack event, and Julius uses his illusion spell, called Ars Weiss, to overwhelm Will and freeze him in place, and then brags to the crowd that he has mastered the El Glacé Frost, a series of 12 ice magic spells created by Elfaria. But Will, using his extensive knowledge of the magic, having been around Elfaria his whole life, notices that Julius has not mastered Ars Weiss, as his teammates are controlling the clones, and Will takes out the teammates with an attack from their blind spot. Then Will locates the real Julius using the difference in temperature and attacks him, pointing out that Elfaria created the magic at age 2. Julius summons 8 clones despite being able to master control of only 4 to launch a desperate attack on Will. Will easily dodges the attacks and defeats Julius. However, Wignall's team wins the event, having taken the crown while Will and Julius were busy fighting each other. Will celebrates his victory over Julius at Gina's tavern with Colette, Rosti, and Werkner, with Julius washing dishes for the night as punishment. Sometime later, the students are looking to form teams for the all-student praxis, and Will is highly sought after due to his performance at the festival. The next day, Will spends his day off going shopping with Colette and Rosti. Colette feels uneasy, especially when Rosti keeps getting in between her and Will. While Will gets maintenance on his sword, Colette and Rosti talk about the matter in private. On the way to the blacksmith, Will encounters Lehana, who asks Will to form a party with her, Julius, Shaun, and Wignall. After hearing that Lehana needs to become a Magia Vander to save her family from ruin, Will accepts the invitation and Colette joins him as well. A few days later, the all-student praxis begins, where the lower floors of the dungeon are temporarily unlocked, giving students the opportunity to earn large amounts of credits, but due to the high danger that some students get killed. As the all-student praxis begins, Will's party jumps ahead of the competition while making quick work of weaker monsters. However, Will is unable to earn any credits since his teammates all defeat their enemies before he can act. Lehana explains that their objective is to defeat the 10th floor's boss, worth 110 credits. However, upon reaching it, they find it is already dead and are ambushed by an even stronger monster, which destroys the ground and causes them to fall to the 11th floor, which only high mages may enter. During the fall, the party also got separated, Will with Wignall, Colette with Lehana, and Shaun with Julius. Meanwhile, a monster stampede destroys the Academy's camp, with some professors being killed by 2 mysterious mages, causing the praxis to get cancelled. Back with Will, he and Wignall venture through the floor to locate their comrades, but the latter doubts the former's abilities and stubbornly refuses help. However, after Will saves him from a monster that he failed to defeat himself, Wignall breaks down, revealing that, while a powerful mage by human standards, his skills are mediocre compared to his fellow elves. Wignall explains that his illusion magic lacks physical mass, and he is thus considered inferior to other elves, especially in comparison with his childhood friend, the Magia Vander Eleanor elf. However, Will begins bonding with him over this, as they are both no talents. They are then attacked by monsters immune to physical and most magical attacks known as Balkars. With Will's encouragement, Wignall manages to overcome his inferiority complex and defeat their enemies by giving his illusions form, causing him to start respecting Will. Meanwhile, the instructors evaluate the remaining students while Werkner and Edward head out to look for Will's party, the only one still missing. Back with Will, he and Wignall find Shaun and Julius. Elsewhere, Colette and Lehana are attacked by the mysterious mages who destroyed the Academy camp, Mars and Headless. Fortunately, Will and the others come to their aid, reuniting the party. Headless then uses transportation magic to summon the monster that caused the party to fall to the 11th floor, an evil Grand Duke, a 270 credit monster. With the way out of the 11th floor blocked by monsters, Will's party is forced to face the evil Grand Duke. Will formulates a plan that involves teaching Elfaria's trick to keep incantations going across Ars Weiss clones to Julius, allowing him to immobilize their enemy with his strongest spell. Lehana then attempts to kill it, but her attack is blocked by a barrier Mars and Headless placed on it. Will saves Lehana from the Duke's counterattack, but it breaks the goggles he got from Elfaria in the process, shattering his spirit. As Lehana and Wignall hold off the Duke, Shaun considers fleeing, but Will asks him to beat him up, which he does, helping him focus again. Colette tells Shaun that Will is scared, but refuses to run, causing all three to rejoin the fight. However, their efforts are not enough. Will then notices a crystal next to him, which Rosti secretly gave him, and recalls previously suppressed memories. After remembering, he has Shaun fire a spell at him and absorbs it into his sword using a power called Whis. Will then kills the Duke in a single blow. After defeating the Duke, the monsters arrive after the Duke's demise, but Will's party are too exhausted to fight back after the fight against the Duke. Werkner and Edward arrive too late, but the party is saved by the Magia Vander Aaron Masteria's old king, who casts a high-level annihilation spell to defeat the monsters. Afterwards, Will meets a member of the Finn tribe, known simply as Finn. Meanwhile, Mars and Headless obtain a sword called the Mage Slayer and consider their mission a success. Back at the academy, the students and faculty mourn the deaths of 11 professors, while Will's party recovers in the academy's infirmary. The party discusses their ordeal in the dungeon, with Lehana crediting Will for being the reason why everybody survived, while Julius maintains his criticism of Will. Shaun asks Will about Whis, but Will cannot recall what happened. Will mentions Finn, and Colette explains that the Finn tribe cannot use magic, but they have vast knowledge of dungeons to serve as guides. That night, Finn reports to Cauldron that the dungeon expedition team led by Aaron reached the 49th floor. He presents a broken Mage Slayer he picked up after the expedition team defeated several mages on the 40th floor for the academy to examine, believing that the sword was the result of experimentation going on in the dungeon. The next day, Will practices and Shaun challenges him to a duel, which gets interrupted after Werkner and Edward spot them. 2 months later, the students take the final exam to end the school year.